Hello, my name's Ethan Stetson and I'm a technical consulting engineer with the Cisco Catalyst Center TAC team. In the last video, we demonstrated how to deploy the Cisco Catalyst Center virtual machine, and in this video, we'll run through the install using the maglev configuration wizard's basic install mode. As before, we're using Cisco Catalyst Center version 2.3.7.4 and ESXi 7.0.3. Please note that the only image supported for ESXi deployment is the Cisco provided OVA. To begin, let's power on the virtual machine and launch the web console. The first screen we're presented with allows us to configure our enterprise interface to run through the Web UI installation wizard. We'll be using the standard maglev installation wizard for this demonstration, so we can skip this step. We'll hit enter on our first option, create MKS. It may take a few minutes after clicking enter to load the next screen. If we click the down arrow on our keyboard and nothing happens, it's loading. For this video, we'll be using the pre-manufactured cluster option, also known as a basic install. There are a few restrictions with this option. It does not have FIP support, it does not support IPv6, and the cluster link is automatically populated. The total installation time is around 30 to 45 minutes compared to advanced mode, which is closer to 3 hours. Installation times may vary from deployment to deployment. The first interface we configure is our enterprise interface. Please note on the left side of the screen it tells us the virtual MAC address for this interface ends in 0DFC. We can confirm we have the correct network port group configured by navigating to our vSphere GUI and expanding the Network Adapter 1 tab. Here we see the MAC address is the same as we noted earlier in the installation wizard and is assigned to the port group we're intending for our enterprise network. It's not uncommon to have the incorrect network port group associated with the enterprise network adapter, so it's worth confirming. As mentioned earlier, the standard install does not support changing the cluster IP. We also do not assign a virtual NIC for the cluster interface like we would the enterprise or management interfaces, so we do not need to confirm the interface like we did in the previous step. We can proceed to the next step. If we've configured a management interface, we would have configured it before the screen we see here. Additional interfaces are optional and not required. We'll be routing all of our traffic through our enterprise interface. Since we didn't add an additional virtual interface, we're not presented with a screen to configure it. The installation wizard for the hardware appliance has the option to configure the DNS server on each interface. For the virtual appliance installation, it's now consolidated and we define it here. This screen lets us know we're validating the settings we configured and the interfaces will be unavailable during this time. Here we configure our HTTP proxy. If we're not using an HTTP proxy, we can skip this step. Please note that although the box says HTTPS proxy, only HTTP is supported. At the time of recording this video, 3-node clusters are not supported for the virtual appliance. We still have the option, however, to configure a virtual IP. If we decide to configure virtual IPs, we must configure one for all the interfaces that were assigned an IP. We're not configuring a virtual IP in this demo, but if we did, we would need to define one for the enterprise and cluster networks. For our last two steps, we'll specify the password for our maglev user. Maglev is our user for the CLI using port 2222. Make sure to remember this password as it's not easily recoverable, and in the last step, we'll identify our NTP server. Once we define our NTP server, the installation wizard will apply the configurations to the controller. This process can take upwards of 30 minutes for the standard install. In this example, it only took 7. Now that the installation is complete, we can navigate to the GUI to complete the initial setup. When logging in for the first time, we'll use the username admin with a password maglev1@3. The default credentials can also be found in the Cisco Catalyst Center's Virtual Appliance Deployment Guide. After we log in, we're prompted to create a new username and password. Make sure to remember these credentials as the default admin credentials that we just used are deleted after this step. When we log in for the first time, it may also be worth creating a separate admin user and password for use by our administration team. We can choose to enter our CCO now, or we can skip this and do it later. We must accept the terms and conditions, and then we're prompted with a quick start overview, and we can either perform our first discovery job or come back to this task later. We may notice an orange banner at the top of the screen indicating that some services may not be running. Although the installation is complete, it may take some additional time for all services to come up and be fully operational. During this time, some workflows may not function as expected. We recommend waiting until the banner has resolved itself before utilizing any of the Cisco Catalyst Center features. And that concludes this demonstration in installing the Cisco Catalyst Center virtual machine using the MKS Standard Installation Wizard. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.